venom in Mortimers." I looked as he indicated with a lift of his chin. Dowager Queen Isabella, now arrived to honour me with her appearance at my coronation, was wrapped about in cloth of gold and ermine, relishing her superiority and entirely indifferent to my sufferings. I was a bride whose dowry and Hainault connections were of more value than my person. I had been part of Isabella's strategy to raise an army, oust her husband from his throne, and take control. Military aid had come as part of the deal. And how spectacularly successful Isabella had been for herself and her damnably ambitious lover, Lord Mortimer. Mortimer was smiling with insincere charm like the rogue he was, eyes as cold as the stone paving. Edward's uncle, the Earl of Kent, scowled indiscriminately on the whole performance. Tension was high, and the rank odour of imminent civil war tainted the incense-filled air. Edward could have sliced through the vicious atmosphere with no effort and a blunt broadsword.
"Do you remember the advice you gave me?"
Edward suddenly asked, as the blast of a fanfare to herald the beginning of the procession all but deafened us. We shuffled slowly into line. "I do," I said. I rested my hand lightly on Edward's arm, anticipating the moment when he would present me to his subjects as their queen. "As I recall, I gave you a particularly hard time."
"And I expect I deserved it."
A fleeting grin curved his mouth, quickly vanishing, so that he looked older than his years.
"Well, my percipient wife, the time has come for change. First, we'll get you crowned."
He covered my hand with his, peering down into my face.
"Can you tolerate it?"
"Of course." Were not daughters of Hainault made of stern stuff? And the brush of Edward's fingertips over my chilly skin had warmed my blood. I might be a strategic bride and less outwardly appealing than my sisters, but that did not mean that Edward did not love me.
"I'm not convinced."
Edward frowned.
"I see shadows under your eyes, deep enough to bury Mortimer in."
Behind us, Mortimer gave the order for the procession to begin. I took a breath and steeled myself for the lengthy but necessary formalities. Since I was so obviously carrying Edward's child, I presumed that it was essential that my crowning be as formal and magnificent as it was possible to make it.
"Wait!"
It was Edward's command, to my surprise. Mortimer stepped out of the procession to see what was amiss. He was not pleased, nor was Isabella, whose preeminence was suddenly compromised. It gave me a little jolt of pleasure. Unworthy, perhaps, but quite understandable. Edward raised his hand to beckon Mortimer's newly appointed Archbishop of Canterbury, who had been lurking uneasily on the edge of the milling courtiers. The priest, resplendent in mitre and full regalia, approached and bowed.
"I want this done fast,"
Edward stated without preamble. There was a pregnant silence.
"Her Majesty should be crowned with all due process, sire,"
Archbishop Meetham reproved, glancing over to where Mortimer, arms folded across his chest, was keeping a jaundiced eye on the proceedings.
"Her Majesty should have been crowned 2 years ago," Edward retorted. "Now her health is under strain."
The Archbishop lowered his voice.
But the Lord Mortimer wishes the full ceremony, sire, to honour the lady."
More like to honour Mortimer. I could see the thought dance in Edward's eyes as he stared at the Archbishop.